Hi, and welcome to this walkthrough of Slice from Initial Audio. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into Slice, exploring all of its features. Slice can be loaded in your DAW of choice or used as a standalone plugin. The five main features of Slice are the main editor at the top, the sample editor here in the middle, the master and effects section toward the bottom. Then we have the multi-sequences for Slice, drum, bass, and also our playlist. And lastly, we have our browser on the left-hand side here. What makes Slice so easy to use is its drag and drop workflow. I'm going to click an initialize preset here and head to my sample folder. Then I'm going to drag a sample from my desktop into the sample browser. Now this sample is imported into Slice, I can click to view and listen to the actual sample. Now I can drag this sample here into the main editor of Slice. Slice reads tempo information from the file name. As we can see, this has 100 beats per minute in the file name. If this data is not available, Slice's engine can detect tempo via transients, but users can also change the BPM manually in the top right hand corner here, and now the sample will play back at the new tempo of 150. By default, the start note is selected to C4 here, and I can trigger this via my MIDI keyboard. This note can also be changed in the start note menu here. We also have variable slice mode, so currently I have it set to 1 beat, but I can also change the beat value, and I can also change the modes from quarter beat to transient detection. As we can see, these modes slice the sample into different sections based on the slice mode's value. As well as playing back the entire loop, you can also play individual slices within the sample editor. You can then drag these directly to your folder of choice or your desktop just by dragging them out from Slice. If you need more precision when editing your sample, you can simply click the area you desire and zoom in to add more detailed precision. And lastly, you can also change the start and end markers to crop an audio file inside of the main editor. This is really useful if you have a sample like this, where there's a lot of silence before the sample actually starts. In the sample editor, we have global control over the entire sample with these controls here. To the right, we can then target individual slices of the loop and apply various controls to individual sections. For example, if we click reverse, the entire sample will now play back in reverse. Alternatively, we can select a slice, and then in the slice view here, we can reverse just this individual sample, and the rest of the audio will play as normal, and only this section will be reversed. We can also time stretch the entire sample by 50% or by double time. There's also pitch shifting capabilities. And we also have format shifting, which applies filter processing to the audio. Lastly, the gate trims the end of the slice, so it changes the slice mode's length. So if I change the slice mode here to something a little bit faster, and I increase the gate value, we get this cool sort of step sequence sound. In the slice sequencer, you can draw notes in to your own preference. You can also zoom in on the grid, and you can even change the grid size. If you create a sequence in the first pattern editor, you can then copy this pattern, paste it into the second pattern, and make alterations for the second pattern for different sections of your song. If you want to clear all your notes, you can simply click Clear All Notes and it takes you back to a blank canvas. You can copy the Slice MIDI roll into your DAW in the plugin version via Slice MIDI. You simply click Slice MIDI and drag it into your DAW's timeline. In the drum sequencer, you can drag samples from your DAW or your own sample libraries, or even the factory sample library in Slice onto these tracks within the drum sequencer. I'm going to drag a sample from my desktop into the sample folder. I'm going to right click on this kick sample and click Clear Current Sample, and then I simply just need to drag this sample onto the channel. And just like that, we've loaded our own kick into the drum sequencer. The step sequencer is where you can sequence and program your own customized drum beats. We can take custom control of individual channels, adjusting their level, their pan, their pitch, and the reverb. Once again, you can also change the grid size here, and you can also mute individual channels that you don't want to hear in the playback. We also have a sidechain control, which allows us to trigger the bass sequencer to the drum sequencer. We'll look at this shortly. Towards the bottom of the drum sequencer, we can control transients for individual channels. So if I select my hats here, I can then control the transients for all of my individual hits on the hi-hat channel. We can do the same with the panning. And lastly, we can also bounce our pattern to a WAV file on our desktop to use in our own productions and in our DAW. The bass sequencer features the same principles from the Slice sequencer featuring a piano roll. We can also drag and drop samples onto the sample editor here, just like in the drum sequencer, and we also have unique control over pitch slide notes to imitate real bass. To turn on the sidechain, we simply have to click on, head back to our drum sequencer, and on our kick channel, click the SC for sidechain mode. Now head back to the bass sequencer, and we can adjust the threshold to respond to the kick drum. Once again, we can also change the velocities of the note here in the bass sequencer. Lastly, along the main editor, we have the playlist. Here you can quickly create an arrangement for your sequence patterns. The plugin version will detect the tempo from the host, in this case the DAW, and in the standalone version, it detects the sample from the BPM that you tell it up here. You can think of this as a way to arrange all the different sequences in real time. You can also adjust the bar length and the zoom. To add in a pattern, all you do is simply click and then drag the value for how long you want it to play, and to erase that, you simply right click. If you want to start from a blank canvas, you want to hit Clear All. And if you want to bounce this entire selection to a WAV file in the playlist, you can click Bounce to WAV. Here it'll bounce it to the desktop as separate stereo stems and also a whole stereo mixdown, so you have more control if you're going to import these into a DAW later on. Playlist MIDI works just like Slice MIDI. You can drag this to the piano roll, and the sequencer is in sync with your DAW's timeline playback. Let's quickly cover the keyboard control. You can change the keyboard's location by simply scrolling through with your mouse. The first octave are pattern keys. The second octave in the orange color are individual drum sounds. And lastly, the third octave triggers your slices. The routing in Slice can be configured in a number of different ways. We have 3 effects racks and a master rack, as you can see here. All samples have a routing selector, and that switches here. So by default, the main editor and the Slice editor will be sent to the number 1 effects rack. The drum sequencer will be sent to the 2nd, the bass, the 3rd, and we can change these if we want to send them all to the same effects rack or to different effects racks. You can also bypass these completely and send them to the master by selecting this value, and then they're only affected by the master output. This is really useful if you just want to add some compression to your drums and not to the rest of the sequences, and vice versa, you want to apply something, say, directly to the Slice sequencer. So by default, the Slice sequencer is heading to effects routing 1, the drum 2, and the bass 3. I'll head in number 1, and where it says no effect, I'm going to add a lo-fi effect. Now in the drum sequencer, I'm going to apply some different effects. I'm going to come down to the IA-LA1, pull back on the threshold, and now this effect is just applied to the drum sequencer. I can also keep adding effects, and all of the effects inside a Slice are modular, so you can move them around. The last thing for us to cover in Slice is the browser. If we head into the preset browser, we have our factory library. All of the presets for the factory library are available to view here in the preset browser. The orange title is a clean starting sample for you to shape yourself in the sequencer and using your own custom effects. The green title is a beat button, and this is a demo beat project that has already been crafted as a starting ground for you to either work with or for you to completely edit and make your own. You can also create your own libraries with producer names and library names. You can then export this library by clicking the export button. It'll zip the folder, and now you can send it to your friends who use Slice, and it'll load instantly with all of the data that was originally created in your Slice. In the sample browser, you can browse factory samples and import your own. And to import your own, you have to simply go into settings and hit open Slice content folder. And here you can import your own preset banks, or alternatively, you can simply just drag and drop your samples. And lastly, if you like a sample inside a Slice and want to use it in something else, you can simply drag the sample out of Slice and into your folder of choice. Thanks for watching this walkthrough of Slice. We look forward to hearing what you come up with.